Thank you for joining us today. We have got a lot of stuff to talk about. I know there were some technical difficulties yesterday. We had a great week last week, and then we ran into all these difficulties with the streaming and having live calls. We think we have it all figured out today. Hopefully, no more issues. If you want to call in during the show today, it is 615-703-5888. That's the number you call. I'll repeat it again in a little bit after we dive into a story. The first thing we're going to talk about, though, is this House race to see who Speaker is going to be. That number, again, if you want to call in about this House Speaker race, is 615-703-5888. And let's go ahead and dive into this story. So I want to point this out, first of all, because they just had a secret vote, and it is a secret vote in the House conference, okay? I want to point that out because I don't believe that an elected representative should ever be casting secret votes. I think that you have a responsibility to your voters to do things out in the open. Own your vote. Explain to people why you voted the way you voted. I've always felt very strongly about that, even if you know that people are going to disagree with it, that they're going to have a problem with the way that you voted. You need to be able to stand up as a representative and explain yourself. I think that's critical. So I want to dive into this because Tom Emmer is in the lead here, okay? They did this secret vote. It came out. He had 78 votes. Byron Donalds, who I've said would be a great choice and a historic choice, was in third place, okay? Got 30-something votes. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I want to point out this tweet that End Wokeness put out because this really explains why Tom Emmer is not the choice. Okay, these are very just short highlights of who Tom Emmer is. Democrats want him to be Speaker. That's been reported widely by the media where they said, if there's one guy we don't have a problem with, it's Emmer. That right there should be a giant red flag. If your opposition is cheering for a guy to be the leader of your party, that is a bad sign, okay? And the reason they're cheering is because they know that Tom is just basically a footstool of the defense industry. He's going to be an absolute lapdog of these mega corporations and defense industry contractors who want to keep the money flowing. Tom is ready to give those blank checks, okay? If you want your voice heard again, call in 615-703-5888. But another thing about Tom, he wants to obliterate the Electoral College. He doesn't believe in the Electoral College. He wants a popular vote. That's something that a lot of far-left people are big fans of because they believe in tyranny of the majority. They're not believers in the Electoral College. And, we could go on and on and on about why the Electoral College is so important, but it's really very simple. The Electoral College was a system put together to ensure that every state had their voice heard in a way that was going to make it representative when we elect an executive of the entire country, okay? Because if you have a popular vote, strictly speaking, that is what elects your president. Here's what happens. If you eventually concentrate our population into just California, New York, okay, and the values are California, New York values, what's going to happen is we're going to have presidents constantly dictated by New York and California. And then the other states, the majority of states, will live in tyranny, okay, because they will be totally disenfranchised. The Electoral College was a way of ensuring that everybody had a voice in that executive branch, okay? When you want that popular vote, that's something that you want as a byproduct of having people in those representative races elected by popular vote. That's where it makes sense. It makes sense in the House rep races. It does not make sense when you think about these situations with an executive. It also doesn't make sense to elect somebody as the head of Republicans in the House who is diametrically opposed to a very core Republican value. And it's not just that one that he's diametrically opposed to. It is many. He voted to certify the 2020 election, which I think is something that, again, is out of step with the base of the party. The base of the party at least wanted their voices heard. He voted for every Ukraine aid bill. He defended Ilhan Omar. He has a 69% liberty score. That is very low. He has a very low liberty score. There is no reason you make somebody like that the head of your party. No reason. He is very anti the MAGA movement. And I think The way End Wokeness ended this is exactly right. If this is the best that Republicans have to offer, the party is dead. If all of the representatives are willing to turn their backs on their voters, then the party's dead. You absolutely must elect somebody that the base of the party sees themselves in, sees themselves represented in. That's leadership. Somebody like Tom Emmer is wholly incapable of being the leader in the House of Representatives, period, because the base of the party does not agree with him. The base of the party that delivered you a majority does not agree with him. If you agree or disagree, call in 615-703-5888. That's 615-703-5888. Next story I wanted to jump into. This is actually good news. We have a lot of bad news, you know, in these times with war seemingly just around every corner. We're going to watch something that brings a lot of hope. Here it is. Apparently, hope is hard to come by today because that video won't play. But you could see the image on screen. That's a bunch of high school kids. It was about 1,000 of them who showed up at a game in Arkansas, and they all just sat there and worshipped on the football field at a public school. I thought it was incredible. I wanted to play for you guys, but something's wrong with the video, so it will not play. Now to some really funny news, because I think you're all going to sense why there's something wrong here. I'm going to play you a video from Gutfeld. You need to turn the sound up for iPad. I don't think they're hearing it because I can't hear it. Can you toggle that little cord a little bit? I can barely hear it. Yeah, for some reason, I'm barely hearing that video. But essentially on Gutfeld, he pointed out an absurdity. And that absurdity is the fact that the Biden administration, they've decided that men who identify as women are women until it comes time for a draft. When a draft comes, they're saying, yeah, they actually do need to register for selective service and they actually can be drafted. So apparently they know what a woman is when it comes time to fight a war. They just don't know otherwise. This really breaks down the lunacy at the core of all this. They know what they're doing is crazy. They know what a man is. They know what a woman is. This whole thing is a charade. It's all a ruse. They know the truth, okay? We all do. And I think that this situation just lays it out so clearly. If you identify as a woman, well, that's fine until it's time to go to war. Then the Democrats suddenly know what a woman is. It's pretty amazing. You know, I mean, I guess that's all it took is a multi-front war and having all these issues very clearly on the table where we may need a draft. You know, and I don't believe we need one, just to be very clear, but they're pushing this idea. They're already sort of, you know, putting it out there, testing the idea of a draft. They've written papers on this, and a lot of this comes down to the fact that they're not meeting their recruiting goals. When you don't meet recruiting goals, bad things happen, okay? And this is one of those bad things is they start to talk about the idea of drafting our young men to die in foreign wars that none of us are asking for. You know, you go out on the street, talk to regular Americans, they're not chomping at the bit to fund more war. They're not chomping at the bit to send 18-year-old boys to die overseas. That's not something your average person seems super excited about. I mean, that's my experience at least. You can tell me if I'm wrong. You can call in at 615-703-5888 if you have a thought different from that or if you agree. We'd love to hear from you on that topic. How do you feel about the Biden administration suddenly knowing what a woman is? I thought this was interesting. This was a story Libs of TikTok put out, good friend of the show. She says that Dove recently partnered with a BLM and fat activist who made up, can we stop for a second? A fat activist? That's a real thing now. They have activists for being fat. They actually, I saw in one of these cases, they say it's fat phobic to work out or to promote workout to people. If you're promoting working out, that's fat phobic. It's kind of incredible. Like, I mean, that is actually a thought someone had in their brain, and they then thought it was a good idea to share that with the world. And they truly believe this stuff. Okay? I mean, it's just, we reach new levels of crazy every day. But okay, Dove, major corporation. I guarantee almost everybody listening right now has purchased a Dove product before in their life. They have partnered with a BLM and fat activist who has made up a hoax about a white woman and destroyed her life. It's a horrible story. One of their other recent campaigns is called The Pits of New York, which features obese people showing off their hairy armpits to address underarm stigma. They also plastered the New York City subway with images of hairy underarms. Does this make you want to purchase Dove products? Very simple for me to answer. Absolutely not. Not only does it make me not want to purchase products from Dove, it makes me want to actively push for people that I know and love and care about to not purchase anything from Dove. They deserve to be the next Bud Light, in my opinion. You choose wokeness, you deserve the end result. We can't only be outraged about something like Bud Light where it goes viral or we've got an image that's super offensive. We've got to be consistent in our values and using our money as a weapon, okay? If you're not weaponizing your money, you are not doing it right. Because let me tell you what, the left is weaponizing their money. So I don't care how many products you buy every month. If you think you don't make a difference because you don't spend that much money, your convenience is not worth our children's future. So if you're just making excuses out of the virtue of you needing more convenience in your life, or not wanting to change a product because it'd be too hard to find a new product, you're failing. It's not too much to ask that you weaponize your money and you punish companies who are pushing wokeness, who are adopting this, who are then turning around using your money to push values diametrically opposed to what you believe in. It's not a hard concept. Not a hard concept at all. So we are doing call-ins today, 615-703-5888. If you want to call into the show to talk about any of these issues, you can call in. With the way we've had these couple of technical issues yesterday, I'm not 1,000% confident that everything is working right now. However, if you call in, we're going to do our darndest to get you on the show today to talk about these issues. So I also thought this was an interesting one. You know, I'm going to play this video. We'll see if we have the sound issue again. Let's try it.
I'm partnering with Dove to talk about underarm stigma.
Even though I haven't shaved my armpits in 10 years, I sometimes still get self-conscious showing my underarms. When I'm feeling the urge to shrink myself and hide parts of my body, I stretch my arms out wide and remind myself to be free in my body. Dove is reminding us all to stretch our arms out and live life to the fullest with their latest Subway campaign. Did you know that 50% of people say that they've judged themselves because of their underarms? Next time you catch those thoughts creeping in, just stretch out your arms and remember that underarm stigmas are just that, stigmas, and not a reflection of who you are. Comment below if you've ever felt any shame or stigma over your underarms.
They're not stigmas. This is not a stigma. There's no such thing as underarm stigma. You know what's going on here? You have lived an incredibly privileged life. Okay, you have lived the most privileged life possible if you're concerned about how somebody else feels about the hair under your arms. And yes, it is gross, okay? Hate to tell you, it's gross. I can't explain it to you. There doesn't need to be a reason. It's just an instantaneous feeling that men get. So if you're out there, you know, there's a reverse that's true here too. So let me explain both. I wish that I could explain this in a more deep sense where maybe you'd be able to latch onto the idea, because I think somebody like this is going to have difficulty latching onto the idea. But the truth is, when a man sees super hairy armpits, there's a visceral response that happens that's just like, yuck, no, stay away, okay? I can't explain it. It's a visceral thing that gets felt. Now, does that mean that, you know, you're judgmental of everybody who, like, maybe is a day late shaving or whatever? No, not at all, okay? Let's be reasonable here. It's like if you're braiding your underarms, though, guys, you're going to find it gross. If you have a problem with that, you're probably going to have a hard time finding a partner in life. On the flip side of that, many women have a totally diametrically opposed view where they see armpit hair and they're attracted to it, which I think is absolutely bizarre, but they are, okay? So I don't know how to explain that one, but this is just, sort of the natural biological truths that we've been denying so much of in America. In the quest to please a bunch of woke people or feminists or whatever it is, to pretend that biological realities are not real. Okay, they are real. These are just things that happen. It's a biological reality that I am much bigger than 99.9% of women. In fact, I struggle to think of any women that I've met who are taller. Maybe WNBA players. It's just a biological reality. I'm bigger, stronger, probably going to be more athletic than 99.9% of women. That's just a biological reality. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with those 99% of women at all. We just have different strengths. That's just, one of those inescapable truths. I think you guys are going to enjoy this next one. We're not going to go through the entire thing, but I'm going to play you guys a little bit of a video here, and I think you guys will enjoy this.
More people
I
to
can't,
hear from.
I'm sorry.
You have a chance. Well, I'm not sorry. Sit down.
I know
and
you're
we're gonna
not
let
sorry.
other
That's the
people-
point. The
we're gonna let
hypocrisy
other
of
people
this
talk.
speech.
I'm
The
gonna
hypocrisy
turn
of the
now
fact that
to Frank
what do you have?
Budisha.
Can you
Frank
please
Budisha is
can you
a
please
leading
make a statement
civil
about
rights
President Joe Biden's
organizer
speech? This is a
who
clearly
is-
warmongering speech. President Joe Biden is calling for $100 billion of funding for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, and we're supposed to just bundle these together and pretend like we're going to rush to World War III, and we're all just going to let Hillary Rodham Clinton sit here. Okay.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
This is not. This is
No,
not the way
no,
to have
no,
a
that-
conversation.
I'm sorry.
If you want to
My-
have a conversation, you're
No,
welcome to come talk to
you
me
can
afterwards.
you can sit here. Okay, right. You're gonna wait for me, right? Please, I do not believe you.
I will listen to you, and I will respond
I
to
do
you.
not believe you.
But right-
Respectfully, I do not believe you.
Well,
And the
then
fact of the matter is that the American people's voice are what need to be heard.
Yeah, they
because
are being
because our
heard.
president is not speaking for the American people, and
Well,
neither are
that's
you.
your opinion. That's your opinion.
Yes, that's my opinion.
Well, then sit down. We've heard your opinion. Thank you very much. Now we're going to.
I'm not going to sit down. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop intervening. I'm going to wait here. I'm going to exercise my free speech
But
until
it's
I'm
not
removed.
free speech when you
This-
are disrupting
Yes, it
everybody
is.
else's
It
opportunity
is free
to
speech.
speak.
This is free speech, everyone. This is free speech. That is not free speech. This is people constructing narratives that are openly hypocritical. I'm sorry. The incredible hypocrisy.
You know,
tell
maybe
me
you
John
could
Foster
actually-
Dulles went with Eleanor Roosevelt to bring this Declaration of the Rights of Man. John Foster Dulles was involved with the CIA.
Okay, so we're not gonna keep going with the video. However, I will explain why I played it. It's always delicious to see Hillary Clinton getting told off. However, what I thought was interesting is this is a continued issue we're seeing crop up with American politicians believing that nobody has the right to speak out of turn and criticize them, and they all cry that it's not free speech. People are going to criticize you. And honestly, you don't belong in politics if you're afraid of being criticized. I think this is one of the really sad things we're seeing throughout all of American politics is representatives afraid to have town halls, afraid to be questioned. And this goes both sides, by the way, okay? I'm not criticizing just one side. People not wanting to debate and stuff. We need to go back to sort of a proud tradition of requiring people to debate each other, to allow people to question their representatives, allow people to question their politicians, ask the hard questions. Look, here's the reality. If you do these things honestly and you allow dissent, what's going to happen is you're going to have audiences that are somewhat mixed, but with your supporters, people who are on the same page as you, they are going to make that clear as well. If somebody is going in there and they're opposing you and they're being somewhat belligerent, the people who support you are going to make their voices heard. That's sort of how this experiment was supposed to work. Congress itself used to be a lot more lively with debate. Congress is not really this place of great debate anymore. It's more so a science of how to use all of these levers of power to do things that your party wants to get done. And we've sort of lost the art of debate, and individual representation largely is let's say neutered, because you've got these individual reps who essentially are threatened on a regular basis with, hey, X is going to happen if you don't vote the party line, if you don't do this. And so you've got representatives who know, hey, if I don't vote with everybody on this, even though I wholly disagree, it's bad for my area, there's potential consequences in the next election where somebody's going to, drop six figures into this pack against me. And it's really, really poisoned American politics. I think it's something we've got to find a way out of, and this goes back to the campaign finance issue I've talked about many times before. Our campaign finance system is so screwed up. When you've got more money coming into a Georgia race from California and New York than you have from Georgia, and that's influencing the amount of impressions that Georgia voters are getting of certain candidates and shifting things in their direction, that's not good. That was not the intention of our founders, to have states like California and New York going and influencing the races in Georgia. Georgia's races, honestly, should not be influenced by me, and I'm in Tennessee. Okay, they shouldn't be influenced by anybody outside the state of Georgia. Georgia should be focused on what is best for them. That's good leadership. It's good politics. Maybe not good politics today, but it's good politics if politics was honest. And I think that's just another reason to understand that politics is not honest anymore, okay? There's some people like myself who have had the life experience of working around large figures in Hollywood. And coming out of it, you're able to sort of say, it's a very disappointing industry. There's this old saying, don't ever meet your heroes. They'll disappoint you every time. Washington, D.C. is no different. Washington, D.C. is probably worse on steroids, because you go there with this idea you've got people fighting for something good, that they care so much that they're there to fight for whatever it is, whatever reason. Hopefully it's liberty. Hopefully it's the ideals our founders believed in. But in some cases, it's like, other stuff. And the truth is, it couldn't be further from the truth. There's very few who are there for the right reasons. Very few who are there to fight for liberty or the ideals our founders had. It's a whole lot of people who are there to do the bidding of corporations, do the bidding of special interests, do the bidding of dark money. And that's the reality of D.C. Look at how many people, not just on the Democratic side, but in even the Republican Party, are there just strictly to be a vote for defense contractors to make sure the money keeps flowing. And, President Trump did something that was smart. When he was around, he understood the defense contractors are never going to stop wanting money. Okay, they're never going to stop. This is always going to be there. So that is intrinsically tied to the bloodlust for war. So the reason they keep calling for war is because they want to keep the money flowing. The problem is war means dead young people, destroyed cities, building cultural resentments against one another. And if we want that to stop, I think that President Trump had the right idea. We need to shift the focus of these defense contractors to building something, innovating something. The money flows, but it's not flowing toward dead bodies. It's flowing towards innovating into the future. So we've got Space Force. Why don't we, instead of starting more wars, instead of getting into more wars, why don't we shift that money to building the ships of the future for Space Force? Eventually, humanity is going to be a spacefaring civilization. So what is the American government doing right now that is public knowledge to bring us into being the leaders of that future? I would say not enough. Instead of building the same old with these defense contractors, why don't we try to innovate something new? We're not selling the dead bodies of young men in foreign countries then. We're not selling the dead bodies of our young men going and fighting there. We're not selling the breakdown of whatever city it is we've decided to bomb. Okay? I think that is responsible policy. And, I wish we lived in a world where it wasn't the case that you had to feed the beast of the defense contractors. But the reality is, at this moment in time, you do have to. And Trump understood that there was no way around it, because if you didn't feed the beast, these defense contractors were going to find a way to start strife in foreign nations where it created public-facing situations that forced your hand. He didn't want that to happen. So he essentially said, look, we're going to make sure that they're getting the money that satiates them and stops them from creating these horrific situations. I think that's probably what you have to do at this point. Maybe the future will find a different way. I hope we do. But in the interim, for peace, if peace is our goal, that's probably the best we can do. Because again, the idea of peace through strength, that innovation is going to make us stronger. So if we invest the money instead of into wars where we're buying the bodies of dead young men, we're investing that money into innovation. We can innovate and create new things that make our lives better, make our lives easier. Okay? I think that's really the direction we need to head. And I'm going to shift to another story here. I'm not sure. I think we're getting a little bit of static here. I'm not sure that there's a great way to seg into this because it's a really sad story. But we've got this situation in the Israel war where I do need to criticize something that happened. This right here, this image you see, this is an open-air funeral that took place outside of a Christian church. And you guys know I have been full-throatedly supportive of Israel going after Hamas, destroying Hamas, dismantling Hamas. But I would say this because I know people who watch my show generally have the same feeling I do on this, that Israel absolutely has a right to defend itself, no doubt. What happened was horrific. In fact, later in the show, we're going to watch some of these interrogation videos of Hamas terrorists, and it's heartbreaking. But I will say this, Israel needs to ensure the safety of Christians in these areas who have had no part to play in this. They are not terrorists. They've been there for an extremely long time. They're a peaceful people who just want to be able to worship in peace, live in peace. And I understand that Hamas puts them in horrific situations where they shoot missiles close to churches and close to UN buildings, close to schools. But you do have to have, I think, more restraint in this situation where you're next to a historic Christian church, because these people did nothing. They did nothing to deserve this. And so I was very upset to see this. I think it was preventable. And I think that even just from just a very realistic perspective, Israel must understand that the vast majority of their support in America comes from Christians. And, that's not wavering at this point. But if this continues, I do think they will see that waver. And so that would be my suggestion is, there needs to be an investigation of this, and there needs to be an explanation of why this happened. And it better be a really good one, because this is a historic church, and I think these families deserve explanations. And I think that they deserve for Israel to, you'll never be able to make it right, but you can at least try to make it better and to make up for what happened. And I think that needs to happen. And I know they've got a lot going on. Our hearts go out to them. There's just horrors were perpetrated on their people on October 7th. So I understand that. This is not to say that in any way what happened to those people is not deserving of a response. It absolutely is. You have to obliterate Hamas. Absolutely obliterate Hamas. But you also have to try your best to keep children safe. These Christians who have nothing to do with the fight, you've got to keep them safe. And I think that that's something that Israel's got to sort of take stock of in the public consciousness of, the support for this and the operations they're having to carry out. I've also said I don't think a ground war is the best idea. You're talking about a very urban environment now with a lot of broken down buildings. You've got tunnels in the grounds that Hamas knows way better than the IDF does because they've been inside them. Doesn't matter if you've got, the layout from being able to see it from above ground. You haven't been inside them. The Hamas guys have been inside them. They've lived and breathed them. They've booby-trapped. They've had time to booby-trap even more around these broken buildings. And so I think ground war is not a good idea, is only going to extend this out and will likely lead to the U.S. getting forced into this war, which may be the intent behind, some of the things we're seeing from foreign actors, because there's also, I think, a bunch of Middle Eastern countries would like to see the U.S. pushed into this. And I would predict something. I predict that Iranian proxy groups funded by Iran will use a drone to hit one of our ships because we've put way too many ships out there. I don't like the way they've done it. I think that it's irresponsible. I think it has put us in a position where we're basically asking to get hit with one of these drone attacks. I will be shocked if I'm wrong on this one. I have a feeling what's going to happen is very soon here, and I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. But I have a feeling what's going to happen is we're going to be taking this clip and we're going to be cutting it up against the reality of war, that when you have a weak president and they do stupid things, bad things happen, and our weak president has put ships in a position where they're vulnerable. This is a new era of war. Drones are no joke, and it's very difficult to protect all of your ships if they're in the position they're in right now with a lack of air support and things like that you need to ensure that you can deal with drones. So I hope I'm wrong. Again, I really do. I hope I'm extremely wrong. I hope I'm extremely dumb on this point, and this is not what's going to happen, but I fear that is what we're going to see, is that there's going to be a drone attack on one of these ships. To dive in further on this, I think I do want to go to the interrogation videos that were put out. This is long, but I think worth it. And I'm going to play it for you guys. I may stop it in between to talk about it, and then we can jump back in kind of where we're at. But I do want to warn you guys, this video is upsetting for some people because they do describe what they did in pretty horrific detail. Obviously, the Israeli government is not showing the actual footage of what they did as they're talking about it. So this is just the interrogations. You don't have to worry about gory video, but the details are jarring. So we'll jump to the video. That video is not, it's coming in staticky. We'll try that one more time. There we go.
مسؤول ايش؟ مسؤول فصيل. مسؤول فصيل؟ فوين؟ الشبورة رفح.
اسمك الرباعي يحيى؟
يحيى ماجد صبري سويدن.
من وين انت؟
من سيارات.
من سيارات، يعني؟
غزة.
غزة.
وظيفتك شو كانت؟
أخ كنت أنا في حماس.
الزمرة؟
في القسام قائد زمرة. شو اسمك الرباعي؟
أحمد ماجد أحمد أبو حميد.
منين أنت من أي منطقة؟
من غزة الدرج.
شو اسمك الرباعي؟
مهند ياسر زيد برزي.
من أي منطقة أنت ساكن؟
الشبورة.
محمد المجدلاوي.
وين ساكن؟
من صراحة.
لأي منظمة أنت تابع؟
حماس.
شو اسمك الرباعي؟ حمزة محمد إبراهيم الزرقاء. حمزة محمد إبراهيم الزرقاء. وين أنت؟ من غزة. من غزة. لأي منظمة شو تابع؟ شو نشيط ايش انت؟ حماس. فايش في حماس؟ القسام. قسام النخبة. نخبة. شو مهمتكم بالضبط كانت تعملوا؟
اقتحام موقع صوب العسكري.
وغير الموقع في كمان كانت مهمة؟
كيبوتس وما رحنا خلاص نروح يعني بعد بيوم أو يومين زي
ومدنيين في ذيك الوقت.
هو التعميمات في بخصوص المدنيين كانت اللي هو يعني قتل الرجال، الأسر اللي هو النساء والمسنين والأطفال.
قتل الرجال يعني المدنيين؟ الشباب مدنيين؟
هذا مدني عسكري زي كذا.
الحين وصلنا على الحدود، رحتنا على بئيري.
بئيري، شو تعملوا هناك؟
السيطرة كان. قولي شو المهمة كانت تبعتكم؟
خطف يعني. زي كذا.
خطف وأسر من كفر عزة؟ لما احكوا لكم يعني قتل واسر، انتم رايحين على مستوطنه فيها مدنيين، عارفين هذا الشيء. مين قال لكم يعني من القياده اقتلوا المدنيين؟
احنا اللي كان يحكي لنا محمد نهض البطش مسؤول المجموعه.
شو قال لكم؟
قالنا احنا مهمتنا كفر عزه، بدنا نقتل، بدنا نقدر نخطف زي كذا يعني.
قول لي المهمه تبعتكم شو كانت بالضبط لما طلعتوا؟
هو السيطرة على موقع صوفا.
السيطرة وشو تعملوا؟ السيطرة وش
المركز فين؟
شو تعملوا في اللي موجودين؟
هو تسيطر عليهم، قتل يعني. اجت تعليمات واحنا غاد لمسؤول فصيل من قائد السرية قال له اخطف لي.
دخلنا كان الصبح في داخلين نخبة وبعديها كمان نخبة داخلين. احنا كان داخلين ناخذ أسرى ونقعدوا البيوت. سلامي بالبيت في وقت التقينا جمعنا عنده، كلم أبو زيد قال له طهروا البيوت واخطفوا قد ما تقدروا أسرى، لأنه في غزة اللي باخذ أسرى له مكافأة.
قديش المكافأة قالوا لكم؟
شقة منزل بيت $10,000.
اللي بيجيب كل أسير باخذ شقة ومنزل؟
مين قالكوا إياها هاي؟
اللي كانوا يحكوها في القسام يعني.
القسام اللي واقف القسام قالكوا كل أسير بتجيبوه بتاخذوا شقة؟
لأنه هم بدهم أسرى، بدهم ياخذوا أقدر ممكن الأسرى، فهم هدفهم من الدخول أصلا إنهم ياخذوا أسرى.
شو المهمة تبعتك كانت؟ اقتحام وين؟ لكفر عزة. شو تعملوا؟ نطهرها ونسيطر عليها. شو يعني التطهير؟ نفضيها. من ايش؟ من الناس. تخطفوا ولا ايش؟ لا ما خطفناش احنا. يعني ايش بس قتل؟ نفضي الضوء.
وشو عمل القسام يهبري؟
قتل.
مين قتل؟
مدنيين. دخلوا 2 على البيت، ضل في غرفة في الوجه مسكرة، طخ على الباب صار في صوت جوا، دخلوا كمان 2، كان في واحد مرمي على الباب إذا هو ميت، كان في دم جنبه طبعا، كان في جوا زلمة مصاب، وأنا متوقع إنها عائلة كاملة.
عائلة كاملة.
لبس عادي يعني، لبس منزلي يعني. الزلمة المصاب كان لابس كلسون، وطلعت مرة لابسة فستان عادي يعني فستان بيت، والتاني برضو كمان لابس فستان، وفي ولد وبنت. فاحنا مشينا يسار وفي بيت هناك، طلعوا منه مرة يعني ختيارة، غطوها.
انه هذول الشباب اللي كانوا معك استعملوا العيلة هاي كذراع بشري.
طيب احكي لي لما كنتوا في كفر عزة شو عملتوا بالضبط انتوا اللي كانوا معك؟
دخلنا أول دار وثاني دار كانت المرأة، طخها حمزة على باب الدار.
واللي المرأة لما شفتها يعني شو شفت عليها؟
شفتها أنا مرمية بس ما قربتش منها يعني، طلع الكلب تبعها بالشارع طخيته أنا بعدها.
So these monsters, you know, they admit to murdering children. They admit to murdering the elderly. They admit to murdering dogs, children, women, unarmed men, elderly, dogs. I mean, there was nobody that they would have mercy on. And it continues, you know, the Israeli side, they ask these Hamas terrorists that they're, you know, interrogating, they ask them, you know, does Islam allow this? Were you being a good Muslim by doing this? And all of them said no, and they all admitted that their acts were akin to ISIS, that, you know, there was nothing in Islam that allowed them to brutally murder a child, that was not something that was granted within Islam, and they were aware of that. A couple of the guys actually end up looking pretty distressed, like they're grappling with what they did. I found really interesting the ending. In the ending, you start to see some talking about blaming the Hamas leadership who live in other countries in safety, who had, these guys say, tricked them into believing that it was a good thing for them to do this and that it was going to result in positive outcomes, and that in reality, their families are all being left homeless, destroyed, and the Hamas leadership is living in luxury in other countries. So I'll bring that part back in.
عشوائيا. صحيح.
الدين منع عن، يعني النبي قال لا
طلع قطع قماش ويدخلها، يقول انه منخنقوا من الدخنة، البنت خافت وفتحت الشباك. بعدين اجى واحد من الجنب حافظ شكله بس ما عرفش اسمه، صار يزعق، قتل اطفالنا وقتلوا نسائنا وصار يطخ عليهم.
قتلهم؟
اطلق عليهم يمكن 10 رصاصات. بعدها
على الطفلة وعلى امها.
بنت يمكن عمرها كان 18 سنة وكمان 21 سنة، وامها وابوها 4 وكلب صغير.
والكلب قتله؟ كم طلقة؟
مش عارف أنا، كل واحد يمكن طخ، هذاك طخ يمكن 10 طلقات الأول، الثانيين كل واحد طخ 2 3 زي.
الصبية كانت مسلحة، كان معهم أسلحة يدافعوا عن حالهم؟
لا ما أطلقوش نار بالنار، بس هذاك أجى هيك وقف صار يطخ هيك شكل،
صار يرش
شكل همج.
وهذا هيك هذا في القرآن هيك بيقول الإسلام؟
لا
حسب الدين الإسلامي، مش أنت إسلامي؟ الدين الإسلامي بيقول لك هيك تعال اقتل. لا خليني أفهم، هذه التصرفات انت ما بتشوفها يعني مش زي داعش هيك قتل المدنيين عشوائيا؟
صحيح.
صحيح؟
الدين منع عن، يعني النبي قال لا تقتلوا امرأة، لا تقتلوا طفلا، لا تعقروا امرأة، لا زي، فاهم علي؟ الدين ما بحث على التشويه والتنكيل
يعني حسب ما العمل اللي صار وانت ما شفت، ايش الفرق بين هذا العمل وبين عمل داعش؟
ما في فرق بين التنكيل بحث.
طب حسب الإسلام هيك تفوت وتقتل ناس ويقتلوا أطفال
لا مش من الإسلام قتل الأطفال.
طب شو الإسلام؟
الدين الإسلامي يقبل هيك؟
أبدا، قلت لك أنا لا تقطع شجرة.
يعني يحيى في اسمين في العالم عملوا اللي انتم عملتوه،
داعش وحماس.
مسموح إنك تقتل مرة هيك؟
ليش القتل هذا كله؟ شو اللي صار؟
مضحوك علينا احنا منهم. مغرر فينا ومضحوك علينا منهم.
من مين مضحوك عليكم؟
من عين حماس.
شو؟
هم قاعدين في الدور وسايبيننا هنا وسابونا جوا.
يعني هيك بتفكر انت؟
هيك بفكر. يعني هم اللي في قطر ولا في تركيا وبيحكي باسم الأقصى والمسلمين وقاعد غادم بعتنا هنا.
مين هذول اللي موجودين في قطر؟
القيادة تاعت حماس.
مين هم؟
اسماعيل هنية، خالد مشعل.
يعني هيك بفكر يضحكوا عليكم؟
هيك ضحكوا علينا. هيك هم غادوا، هاي برضو أهالينا بغزة يعني قاعدين بنقصفوا.
I think that says everything. You know, I don't think you need to see the rest of the interrogation, but if you want to watch the rest of it, you can go to my page on x.com/RobbyStarbuck, and you scroll down, you can see the full 13 minutes of it. This is sort of the really stunning thing about war in modern times is you get access to this stuff so quickly. I don't think there's anything even remotely close to it in terms of access in previous wars at the tip of your fingers, you know, to be able to see something like this and see these men who perpetrated these horrible acts. I struggle to even call them men. It's monstrous what they did. You can see some of them grappling with it. You know, if you have like really strong intuition, you can kind of see that. You can also see there's one of the guys there who to me looked like he's some sort of like, we'll say slow, okay? He seems like he's slow. And this gives credence to something I saw recently. The Imam of Peace, Imam Tawhidi, he was saying that the West has accepted essentially migration from Islamic countries in crazy numbers that are essentially majority the types of people that the Islamic countries don't want. They're the types of people they would want to put in prison or to segregate away from society, and instead Western countries have taken them. That guy sort of seemed like an example of that, somebody who's on the slower side, maybe prone to radicalization because of the fact that they are incapable cognitively of breaking through and understanding how broken an idea is or if they're being tricked. Types of people who fall for Ponzi schemes, you know, that stuff. But much worse, obviously, in this case. I thought it was a stunning video. You really see the lack of humanity, and I think that, you know, that's a byproduct of many things, but you also start to understand how brutal this was, this attack by Hamas. And you start to understand from an Israel position that there's no option but to destroy Hamas. And the one thing that I've been perplexed by is that we have not seen Israel go into these other countries with the support of the West, you know, saying, hey, we're cool with it, go for it, to take out the Hamas leaders who are hiding in Qatar. Okay? They're hiding there. Everybody in every country is aware of it. They know leadership is hiding there. They know leadership is also hiding in Turkey. And I think Turkey's a harder one to allow them to go in and attack because of the whole NATO deal. However, in the case of Qatar, you can send them in, you know, with Western support and get rid of these guys. It's going to be messy. It's going to be a heck of a lot messier if we don't. And I think that I'd rather messy there and kill the leadership than messy over what we're seeing now, where we see a lot more civilians in danger as a byproduct of it. So, I think that the focus needs to be on eradicating the Hamas leadership if you're Israel. And the U.S. just needs to be able to say, hey, we get it. What happened is horrific. You guys do what you've got to do to take out Hamas. Do everything you can to stop children from being casualties as well in this. Do whatever you can to protect women and children and Christians there that have no part in this. And, as long as you're doing that, we understand you've got to do what you've got to do to take out Hamas. I think that should be sort of the American position. We've given them a lot of support over the years. I think that's really the extent of it. None of our men should be on the ground for anything except for getting our U.S. hostages, because there are still U.S. hostages. Send in our special forces to get them. That should be the extent of our physical involvement in the war. And anything aside from that, I think is going to lead us on a path of something really horrific. And I think that we teeter on entering into World War III territory. And the problem is we've been teetering on it in so many ways for such a long time that it starts to feel like, oh, you know what? This is just another one of those moments that feels like that. But the truth is, at any moment it can tip. It's just teetering. And at any moment it can go in the other direction. And all it takes is one event, one terrible event, and we can be drug into something horrific. And I think what we're going to see on the home front as a byproduct of that, if it happens, is going to be awful. And so everything I'm saying is from the vantage point of putting America first and making sure that we don't have a situation where America is led down a path of World War III where we send our young men and women to die. And I say women because I absolutely believe if it popped off in that way where we ended up in World War III, the U.S. government would have absolutely no shame sending young 18-year-old girls to die right alongside the 18-year-old boys. I believe they would have no shame. They would do it in a heartbeat. And here's the thing I've always said about war. I think if you're in elected office, there should be an absolute requirement. If you are going to vote to send our young men and women to go to war and potentially die, either you or one of your children or grandchildren need to be willing to go fight in that war. Either you, your children, or grandchildren. There has to be a personal investment in the war. And I don't mean the types of investments that we're seeing representatives make. If you guys follow Unusual Whales, you know what I'm talking about, where these members of Congress will invest heavily in defense contractors and then pass bills to stick money in the pockets of those defense contractors. And as a byproduct, the stock price goes up, the representatives make money. That's not the type of investment we need in war. We need representatives who are personally invested, because if we're going to go to war as a country, you better damn well be invested yourself. You better damn well think that it is so worthwhile, such an incredible cause and need, that you would risk your life for it. Because if you're going to risk the lives of American children who are barely adults, stick a gun in their hands and send them to some foreign country, you better be willing to go. Or your children or your grandchildren. You pick. See, most of these people are such cowards, they'll send their kids or their grandkids. But maybe it'll make them think twice if that was a requirement. Of like, hey, if you're going to vote to send us to war, you're going to vote to send our young men and women to die, you better be willing to put some skin in the game. They haven't had skin in the game for a long time. For a long time. And I think it's time they put some in. Because we're entering this chaotic place in human history where war seems to be around the corner in every direction. So I think we've got to have some sense of morality here. And that seems like the most stable kind. Is let's say, okay, you guys do make this call. Constitutionally, this is your call. As elected representatives. It's on us to do a better job electing better people. But if you're our elected representatives, put some skin in the game. Either you, your children, or grandchildren need to be in this war. And I don't mean pushing paper. I don't mean at some, safe facility in D.C. where, you're pushing paper. I mean front lines. I mean going to war. And if I was ever in office, for any office, that would be the way I approach wars. Am I willing to go die for this? Am I willing to send my son to potentially die in this war? And 99.99999% of the time, the answer is going to be no. The wars that are worth fighting are ones where America, our children, our grandchildren, our way of life are threatened to a serious degree where we are willing to die to defend it. Okay? Entering these wars all over the world, what has it gotten us? Nothing but resentment from foreign countries where their children and grandchildren have a hatred so deep for us, most Americans can't even fathom it because you have never hated something as much as they hate us. Okay? That's the reality. That's what has happened. And we're not talking about terrorists. A lot of innocent people have died. Obviously, killing terrorists is a good thing. But there's been a lot of innocent casualties along the way. And their children, their grandchildren will not forget it. And if we keep this up, we continue this, we're going to put ourselves into a corner where we are surrounded by people who resent us, who hate us, with such a burning passion that we couldn't possibly fathom it. Because we never got put in the position they did. It's time we started being responsible about this stuff and shifted our focus and our priorities. Obviously, we live in this broken, dysfunctional political system where the defense contractor beasts have to be fed. Let's feed them responsibly. Instead of feeding them the dead bodies of foreign young men and our own young men, let's start to feed them to create and innovate. Let's create the tools of the future and innovation of the future, the crafts that we'll be able to use in a spacefaring civilization, whatever it is, something that is going to make our lives better instead of worse, something that is going to build us up instead of breed resentment in places where we do not want resentment to build. It seems very simple to me, but the foreign policy apparatus, a lot of our representatives, they don't seem to get it, so I think they need to hear from you. If they hear from more of you saying what I'm saying right now, maybe we break through. And you might say, what's the point? Well, I can't hate the question because sometimes I ask it too, what is the point? But the truth is, our founders could have said that. They could have said, what is the point, so many times, but they didn't. They persisted. They were relentless. They went after what they believed in. And in the end, it was worth it. And you know what? I want to be very honest. A lot of them had very difficult lives. They had very difficult lives. It was not easy. But what they did created something magnificent that paid off for generations. I hope it's easier for us. I think already you can say, we have comforts that they didn't have. We're being asked to sacrifice less than they were. Maybe it goes to a worse place, who knows? But even if it does, how committed are we to our beliefs? Because you can say a lot of things about the left, but they're committed to what they believe in. I mean, these people glue themselves to a coffee shop counter over what type of milk they serve. That's not a joke. That really happened. So ask yourself, what are you willing to glue yourself to the counter for? And on the right, that's usually like a stunned response I get. I've asked this question before at speeches I've done, and I ask people that, and they're kind of like, I don't know. And as crazy as it sounds to glue yourself to a counter, it's really a question about what matters enough to you to really risk something. Because on our side, we're very prone to, common sense, and I think that's a good thing, but sometimes it takes us to this place where we go, oh, well, it would be smarter not to say something that I actually think because that could impact my business. And I'm here to tell you that there come times in history where you've got to say those things anyways, where ruffling feathers is your duty beyond your duty to provide. Because if you don't draw lines in the sand about the culture and country you live in, you lose it. And if you lose it, you could lose everything. That's what happened in Cuba. A bunch of people decided they couldn't speak up. It was too dangerous. You could lose friends. You could lose customers. You might be seen as really unpopular. And so they didn't say anything because they were afraid of losing business or friends or whatever it is. And guess what? They lost all of it. They lost all of it anyways. And it's one of the great regrets you hear from Cubans who ended up becoming, really patriotic Americans, is that they're like, damn, we wish we would have said something. We lost everything anyways, but we had convinced ourselves that it was easier to be quiet. It was the safer choice, and that everything was going to be okay. We didn't want to lose business. We would just have different beliefs, and it would all work out in the end. It didn't work out. By the way, if you want to call in on this subject, you can call in at 615-7035-888. Call in 615-7035-888. We'll bring you on live to the show. You can tell us what you think about all this. This is one that's very personal to me that my family went through in Cuba, is you have got to speak up at any cost, at absolutely any cost. This is a Tennessee story. Actually, ironically, before we even get into it, you may remember this. I posted this photo about a year ago. It wasn't a full year ago, but it was a while back. I don't remember the date. And people were, upset at me over in some parts of the state about this, but I was speaking up for concerned parents who sent this picture to me of this teacher who was asking kids to call them by different pronouns and is actually a male substitute, dressing as a woman, wearing a dress. And it turns out, so I spoke up about this, and it caused a lot of heat, was a big story at the time. Well, that same person just made the news yesterday. Substitute teacher couple busted for prostitution to make extra money or they'll, quote, starve after cops pull off undercover operation. I'm not even going to go into how much, because that was in the article. I was like, I'm going to avoid that with a 10-foot pole because this is a photo of the two people we're talking about. Those are public school substitutes in the state of Tennessee. I am ashamed to admit that as a Tennessean, but it's the truth. And obviously there is a lack of vetting in our public schools when it comes to teachers. If these two could make it through, they had a bunch of drug paraphernalia in their house. I don't think that's super shocking. They say they were concerned about starving, but the truth is, this one, at least one of them doesn't look like they're having any trouble getting food. That was mean. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize for that comment. No, I don't. But, you look at this, they say they were going to starve. Here's an idea. If you think you're going to starve, you're in that position. You know what, better than an idea, I'm going to give advice to young people, okay? My advice to young people, if you don't want to end up like these two substitute teachers caught as prostitutes with drug paraphernalia saying they were going to starve if they didn't prostitute themselves out, here's some very simple things you can do, okay? Step one, if you ever get the urge to have a haircut like this or get a bull ring in your nose, I want you to write it down on a piece of paper, okay? I want you to write it down on a piece of paper, fold it up, stick it in a box, put that box somewhere, bury it, stick it somewhere you're not going to see it, okay? Put a timer in your phone for 10 years. 5, okay, you could do 5 years, okay? 10's better, but do 5. When that timer goes off, go back to that box, open it up. If you still want to do it, go ahead and do it, okay? You're a lost cause at that point. Chances are, though, 99% of the time, you're going to have grown up and you're not going to have done something really stupid that has impacted your ability to get a job and gainful employment. And then maybe you won't end up prostituting yourselves out thinking you're going to starve. Because, yes, both of them look unemployable to me. If they came in for a job interview, I'd say, I think you might be at the wrong address. Because to me, you're not getting a job. Like, I mean, you don't look like you want a job. You look like you want to live off the state. I mean, that's my initial, I just see your face. That's what I see, is somebody who wants to mooch off the state and wants somebody to pay for them to have sex change surgery, where you don't actually change sex, but you create a wound or whatever it is. I don't know which direction they're going. That's what I see, and I think that's what most people see. Here's another one, kind of in the same vein. Let me play this video for you guys.
7 in the morning at the physical therapy office, misgendered. by someone who I've told my pronouns to. And I said, just to let you know, my pronouns are they, them. And they went, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And then I had to explain too many times to my physical therapist that I didn't want to do an exercise where I had to crunch my face into my boobs, because that gives me gender dysphoria.
Oh, you poor thing. I'm sorry. I can't. This is like these people. You know what I think? We made a big mistake closing mental institutions. That's what I think. We made a very big mistake doing that. I've got to criticize Ronald Reagan. He had a huge role to play in it. We should not have closed all those mental institutions. You see a real connection, okay, between these things happening. She has clearly not had real problems in life. Clearly. Because if she had had real problems in life, we wouldn't be seeing videos like this. You wouldn't. People with real problems don't whine about somebody misgendering them. People with real problems, they aren't triggered by having to do an exercise where their head touches a body part because it gives them dysphoria. Okay? This is, again, another reason why I actually think we are going to end up in a world war, because times come in history where things have been so easy for some people that they almost need a war to remind them how bad things can be so that they suck it up and stop acting like lunatics, okay? Because there's no excuse for this behavior. It's so embarrassing. I mean, it's hard to even respond to it because it's so embarrassing. We've got a caller. We'll bring him on. Tell us your name, where you're from.
Hey, Robbie. My name is Jason. I live in Washington State.
How are we doing? How's Washington doing?
Robbie, we're getting some rain here today, as is typical for this time of year. But no, I was on Twitter scrolling, and I saw the post with the telephone number for the show, and it sounded like you were curious kind of about others, the situation with Israel and Palestine, and so I wanted to just call and discuss that with you, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah. Tell me your thoughts. Where are you at with everything going on over there? What is the feeling, not just for yourself, but what you're seeing in your friend groups and your family?
Yeah, Robbie, great question. So my personal take on the situation is, I think, first and foremost, any loss of life is a tragedy, kind of no matter how you qualify yourself outside of being a human and being alive, whether you're a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, an Israeli, a Palestinian, an American, anytime somebody dies, they were a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, an uncle, an aunt, a niece, a nephew, a grandparent, a friend. It's a tragedy. It's a very sad thing. So that's first and foremost. Second to that, I think that the response from Israel to what happened on the 7th has been way over the line. It seems that gosh, you know what, Robbie? This is such a thing, and it's such a hot button issue.
Yeah,
it's really difficult to try to diagnose it and to speak about it unless we can really kind of take a step back and look historically at the creation of the state of Israel, to kind of take a look at the players and the conversations that took place to make that happen, to kind of take a look at the Palestinian people who, had been living there for some time, and then to kind of have an understanding as to kind of once the country was created and it kind of had its outline, kind of what has happened since then. And
I think all that matters.
What really we're witnessing.
Yeah, all that matters. I think it's going to play a role in what happens. I do think the larger role that's going to be played, though, is going to be by just the reality of the situation, the reality of the ground. Because even just like, if you go back historically, the population sizes were so different. Everything was so different. And I think if you just look at the reality on the ground now, I agree with you that just the cost of human life is heartbreaking. And I'm sick of seeing people die in wars that, frankly, it seems like the people responsible for them always escape dying, and that just doesn't seem right to me in any way. I see the situation and what Hamas did. I go, it makes sense to me to obliterate Hamas. I get it. If it was my kids, my family, I would want to obliterate Hamas. That does not mean you kill everybody in that area that's remotely near. I think you have to be strategic and careful how you do this because, again, one of the big problems for the U.S. is we did this stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan where innocent people were killed. There's all these, you can read all of these accounts of drone strikes from the Obama administration that hit weddings and religious ceremonies and stuff like that where they missed their targets. They didn't even hit the terrorists they were going after at all. And what happens is you build this and breed this horrific resentment of America and the West. And that is going to come back to bite all of us in the end. And I think you risk that same thing right now among these people. And, I covered at the beginning of the show the Christian church that was hit by one of the bombs that, Israel was trying to hit an area where Hamas was launching rockets from, and was talking about, why they need to be very careful what they're doing here in this response, because even people like me, I support a response. I support them defending themselves. I support them obliterating Hamas. I don't support just unchecked destruction of everything. I think that that's not wise in any direction. Even if you believed that they should go to war and just obliterate everything, it's in my mind a tactical mistake, because you're creating a guerrilla warfare reality that benefits Hamas, because they know where the booby traps are, they know where the tunnel systems are, and the IDF only has a reasonable idea of where they are, but they don't know what it's like to be inside them. They also don't know the capabilities inside them as well as the men who are in it on a daily basis and live and breathe it. So I think that just from that vantage point, it's sort of a mistake. But I get what you're saying. You've got to include considerations about the entirety of history. And it goes way, way back, way before any of us were alive. If you go all the way back to just the original Jews who lived in the area and the original Arabs who lived in the area, this goes so far back. It has so much history, so much strife, and I think all of it plays a part. But you were saying, it's hard to put into words the reality of the situation and, sort of what needs to happen from here. And I wonder if you would agree with this, that what Hamas did was horrific, that it's totally within Israel's right, and I think everybody should support Israel going after Hamas, but that does not mean supporting going after people who had nothing to do with this, or going after, the Christian churches, or, in fact, I want to show you something. Because I'm curious. I want to ask you a very specific question. Would you agree with that while I'm pulling this up?
You know what, Robbie? Yes, I think I can agree with that statement. I think that that makes sense. However, when you talk about the response from the Israelis, and you consider kind of how embedded Hamas is in places where they have weapons, they have a cache of material. It's going to be really hard to exclusively limit a response strike, if you will, to only take out that material. You know what I'm saying? So,
So that's actually what I have up on screen right now. Do you see this?
I don't. hold on a second. Let me.
So I've put up on screen. I'll explain to you what it is while you're getting it up. This is a map from satellites. This provided by IDF. Essentially, this is a kindergarten you see in the building on the left, and the red box is an area that Hamas is firing rockets at Israel from. So this was a question I asked a friend because they were saying Israel shouldn't be bombing any schools, anything that could potentially have innocents in them. And this presents a very hard moral question for a lot of people. You know, if you've got this building here, this is a kindergarten, and just a few clicks away, you've got them launching rockets at Israel.
Yeah.
And if you're Israel and some of these are getting through the Iron Dome, because Iron Dome, you know, it does a good job, but it does not eliminate all rockets. And some of these are getting through from this site specifically. What do you do? Do you take the risk you're going to blow up a kindergarten? Or do you continue to hope and pray that no more rockets get through from this spot? I think if you're Israel, you have to go after this spot, right?
You know, I think that's, Robbie, I think you've laid that one or the other out well. I think perhaps, and right, you're kind of effed, if I can use that technical phrase.
Yeah.
Right there. So what it seems that we need a third way. You know, I think that this is where a potential for a mediating force made up. We're getting real crazy real quick, but listen, if Israel needs to respond, and if Hamas has military targets in a kindergarten or a hospital, a lot of innocent people are going to be killed. So it's almost as if we need a mediated ceasefire. We need representation at the table from both sides, and we need to discuss what's it going to take for there to be peace. What is an acceptable solution for both parties? You know, I don't necessarily know what the latest is on any sort of brokering or conversation, but you know, I'm sure that you know it really, Robbie. Honestly, it seems to me that if Israel made some concessions to the Palestinians, that would go an extremely long way to addressing this issue for the time being, just to have people take a freaking breath and get some cooler heads to the discussion.
I think if
table.
you're Israeli, though, if you're Israeli, you're going, why should we be the ones to make concessions? They were the ones who committed a terror act. Why are we giving, you know, some sort of concession or graciousness in any sense? Because temperatures are really hot in Israel, really, really hot. I've got friends there.
No,
They're very,
Robbie,
very
that's
upset.
criticism. You know, I hear you, and I'm not trying to downplay that whatsoever. But that same thinking, that same thinking is what people are criticizing, and they're displaying that same level of vitriol and just rage. You know, someone's got to make it stop. You know, this is going to continue until there's nobody left on the planet. Man, I'm a veteran of some meme wars. I'm a veteran of the internet. I've seen some of the darkest, most disturbing things. Man, seeing children getting pulled out of rubble.
It's horrific.
Ripped apart. It's really, really bad. And so you can be angry all you want. You can want retribution all you want. But at what point are we going to think about our grandkids or children, our grandchildren's children? You know, this has got to stop at some point. An international mediated ceasefire, Israel making concessions, the Palestinians getting their word through any additional structure that they're not going to, be violent. Man, I mean,
they're going to have to get rid of Hamas.
Also,
I mean, that's the bottom line. They're going to have to get rid of Hamas. If they had different leadership, I think that, there is definitely a willingness among a lot of people for this to get done. You got to understand, too, there are some Middle Eastern countries who hate that this is going on. As much as they're public-facing,
100%,
saying that they're supporting
yeah.
the Hamas side and the Palestinians, deep down they hate this whole thing. Like the Saudis, I think, hate all of this. This is not an area they wanted to go. They're kind of focused on a rebirth in many ways of their own country and innovation and things like that, and they don't want to get into this stuff. I almost think that what would be interesting is the proposal of going back to the last proposed, separation into having it be, 2 states, and having the Saudis, or maybe a collection of Middle Eastern countries like Jordan, Egypt, the Saudis, all together act as managers of that new state for a period of time to ensure that terror groups do not seize control of it. And so what I think that would do is it gives some sense to the Palestinian people that there's an Islamic, force that, because clearly there's so much religion at the core of all this. And I think there will be more trust if there's some sort of Islamic authority figure that on the world stage among other countries is respected in terms of like, hey, we know how they do business. They know how we do business. They're not going to do something insane. I think that something like that may be the answer here because, again, Israel was just on the precipice of signing a peace deal and recognition in total with Saudi Arabia. And so they've got a decent relationship with the Saudi representatives that they were negotiating with. I think something like that could be the answer here. The question is, does Hamas try to hang on? What is their leadership going to try to do at this point? Because the thing that's really sick that I sort of laid out at the beginning when you were talking is that, like, the leaders, the people responsible for this stuff, they never seem to die in these wars. They're like cockroaches. It's very rare that they get what's coming to them. And these guys are hiding out in Qatar. They're hiding out in Turkey. What happens to those guys who called the shots here? That's going to be very important in Israel because I can tell you right now, I think if the Saudis and a group of Middle Eastern countries said, we're up for this, and if Israel said, okay, we're up for this, we're okay with, making a deal here to stop the killing. However, we require that we get these Hamas leaders in our custody. I think that would actually be a problem for some of the Middle Eastern countries, and I think they would protect these guys. I don't think the Saudis would, but I think some of the other ones would, and I think at the end of the day, that's going to be the biggest problem because it's almost like this war, for some of these people, they want it to continue until the U.S. gets involved, and I think there's a lot of people rooting for the U.S. to get involved. I'm not one of them. I think it's the most dangerous, stupid idea possible to get the U.S. involved on the ground in another war in the Middle East. But I think that's what's going on the other side is there's so many competing interests to have this continue, and they're not going to relent on the Hamas stuff until there's been enough bloodshed. And I don't know when that is for these people. I really don't. For the people who want this to go on perpetually, I don't know what that line is for them, but I think that there's definitely people in the Middle East, in some of these Islamic countries who would like to see this continue. Did we lose him?
No, I'm still right. And you got me?
You're breaking up a little bit with us. We'll give it a shot though. See if we can hear you.
No, and I don't know. Aims there. And
I think we lost. I think we got to drop it because he's going in and out. If anybody else wants to call before we end the show, 615-703-5888. We are going to be ending shortly, but if you want to call in to say your piece about this, feel free, call in. And there was one other thing I wanted to tell you guys about. We were going to talk about this yesterday. I'll go ahead and cover it today. Over the weekend, I broke a story about a shooting that happened in Laverne, Tennessee. 2 police officers shot. And unfortunately, the suspect in the shooting is John Drake Jr. That is the son of the police chief of Metro Nashville Police, John Drake. It is his son that he has not been in contact with for a very long time. They don't have a relationship. I feel horrible for everybody involved. Thankfully, the 2 officers are okay. From what I've been told, this is a robbery gone wrong. Shot the 2 police officers who, again, are thankfully stable at this point. Terrible situation for Tennessee. We've had some weird stuff happen over the past year, and this is just another one of them. And I was reluctant actually to go with the story because I had really solid sources, but it just sounded so wild to me that a police chief's son would be the suspect that I kind of held back for a little bit until I had really hard confirmation from another person. but just terrible stories. Considered armed and dangerous is not it's not a good story. I mean, it's really, really heartbreaking to see. The last thing I wanted to really hit is this poll that was done by Harvard Harris. They asked people of different age groups, do you think the Hamas killing of 1,200 Israeli civilians on Israel can be justified by the grievances of Palestinians, or is it not justified? Okay, the majority say, 76% say not justified. A quarter of Americans say it can be justified, the murder of 1,200 innocent Israeli civilians. Here's what's scary, though. They break it down by age. 18 to 24-year-olds, 51% of 18 to 24-year-olds say that Hamas murdering 1,200 Israelis can be justified by their grievances. That is really dark. Go to 25 through 34, that number's still 48% say it can be justified. You go up beyond that, it's unacceptable to the other ages. But between 18 and 34, we have a real problem. A real problem. Where they believe the slaughter of over 1,000 people, we're talking about women, we're talking about children, we're talking about old ladies, we're talking about unarmed civilians who had no way to fight back, being hunted in their homes. Some of them burned alive, some of them shot in front of their families, some of them raped before they're killed. And there are people in our country who genuinely believe that this can be justified in any way. This is a sickness. This is an illness that has infected our country, and it came through wokeness. It came through the American universities, okay? It's very clear if you look at these age groups. It's in alignment with the fact that the left has taken over major universities. And, you know, it makes me think of so many things. I have so many thoughts, but one of them is when I do speeches in many different places, I'll have people come up to me and they'll say, thank you so much for what you're doing. It gives me hope because you're on the younger side. You know, it's great to see young people fighting. And then they'll say, you know, I've got a daughter, I've got a son who doesn't speak to me anymore because of politics. And I always say the same thing. I say, when did that happen? They always say the same thing, college. And I always ask before college, did any sort of, you know, strife exist? Were you guys already arguing about politics? In most cases, they say no. There was no issue. They were their sweet boy or sweet girl, and then they went to college. And then at college, everything changes. And so I would say to parents, my advice at this point, as a younger person who has kids, one of them who's very close to that age of, you know, considering college and all that stuff, I became a dad young, so I think of college this way. The only reason your child should be pursuing college is if they absolutely have to for whatever career it is. So if you want to be a doctor, you have to go to college. I get it. You've got to. You want to be a lawyer, you have to go to college. I get it. Anything else, though, outside of these areas where you were absolutely required to go to college, life experience and getting on the job is going to be the best thing for them. Trade school is an option, things like that. College can be one of the worst poisons for your child. It's so weird because it's counter to all the programming we've had. You know, for our whole lives, we were told college is this great thing you give your kids, this great opportunity. It's going to give them a boost in life. But the truth is, it can be one of the greatest poisons you give your child if it's not for a very specific reason. You know, if your child is going to figure out who they are, and they're studying underwater feminist basket weaving or some weird topic, they shouldn't be there. It's only going to end badly. Okay, so that would be my advice because that's how we got here. That's how we got to this 51% number, where 51% of 18 to 24-year-olds say that Hamas attacking innocent people can be justified. There's no justification for this. There's no justification. None. And here's what's scary. If you dive deeper into this poll, you can see they're also asked about a few other things that have to do with the Israel situation. So they're asked, do you think the attack on Jews were genocidal in nature or not? 62% of the 18 to 24 group say that they were genocidal in nature. That means that there's some overlap between the 51% of these people who are in that 18 to 24 bracket who believe that it is justifiable what Hamas did, who also understand it was genocidal in nature. So that's telling you, those people in that age bracket, that there is an overlap. There is a group of them. I don't know what the number is, but there is a group of them. Harvard-Harris, who did this poll, probably know what this overlap is, but they didn't put it. There's an overlap of young people who believe it was genocidal in nature what Hamas did, but also believe it was totally justifiable. Okay? You need to go and extrapolate from that and ask yourself a set of questions. Those young people, what are they going to be doing in the future? They're going to be your doctors. They're going to be people running this country in many respects. And if they're okay with this, your next question needs to be, what are they going to be okay with here? What atrocities can be justified here on American soil? And I think if you're honest with yourself, the answer to that question is really frightening. This is a group of people who have been protesting on their campuses with signs saying abolish whiteness, saying land back now. They've got all kinds of stupid slogans, but they're not just stupid slogans. These people believe it. They are ardently attached to these ideas, and you could see with what happened after the attacks on Israel by Hamas, a bunch of these left-wing activists said, what did you think it meant when we said decolonize? I want you to think about that. I was getting the hiccups. I want you to think about that, because they've said that here about the United States. They're serious with this stuff they're saying. I don't know what else they need to do to make it clear to you guys. They've been showing up in the thousands to protest in support of terrorism. Speaking of, there's been all these horrific protests in favor of Hamas. I want to highlight this. If we can go to 3 and see the media here. Go ahead and screenshot this. There's going to be an event here in Nashville, Tennessee Rally for Israel at Legislative Plaza on October 27th, this Friday, with state representatives, senators, pastors, rabbis, community leaders. The Jewish and Christian communities are coming together in unity to stand with Israel. The information's on the flyer here. I encourage you to come. I have a bad feeling we're going to see some horrific left-wing activists, trying to go out there acting like idiots, but I know there will be strong law enforcement, and we will not accept any lunacy from these people. It's about standing with the victims of Hamas terrorism. Okay, so if you want to be a part of that, that is in Nashville on Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. at Legislative Plaza. I do want to say good night to a very good boy before we end the show today. Bobby, the oldest dog in the world, has died at age 31. He was a very, 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 very good boy. That's what I've been told, at least. And it's incredible. Think about that in dog years. Do we have a calculator over there? What is that in dog years? Dog years is 7 years. So 70 times 3 plus 7. So 140 plus 70. I might embarrass myself right now. We're at 210, 217. I did that faster than your calculator, okay? 217 years old in dog years. That is incredible. Bobby is basically like a zombie, I guess. I mean, that's crazy. 217 years? That's nuts. So, I wonder who's going to take that mantle now. I kind of want to see this. I love animal stuff. I'm definitely one of those people who secretly follows, a bunch of animal accounts. There's all these, happy animal accounts, unlikely animal friends. Me and my kids love that stuff. The unlikely animal friends, obsessed. I love it. I love to see the, lions playing with, because it makes no sense. A lion adopts a dog. You're like, how does that even happen? But, it's really cute. There's some people who are like, see, anything's possible. Yeah, it's possible anecdotally, okay? But in general, there is a general truth. Lions are going to eat smaller animals like dogs. But it's very cute stuff. So I like this. I like that type of thing. I wanted to end on somewhat good news. I lied. There is one piece of bad news that I do want to include. let me cover this real quick, and then we'll be out for today. So, food giant Tyson Foods has partnered with the World Economic Forum-backed bug food maker. Okay, Tyson Foods last week announced its foray into the insect protein market by partnering with the Netherlands-based bug food manufacturer Protix. In addition to a cash investment in Protix, Tyson Foods announced that the two companies have agreed to build a large facility which will be used to make bug food. The yet-to-be-built facility in the U.S. will house an enclosed system to support all aspects of insect protein production, including the breeding, incubation, and hatching of insect larvae. In addition to the ingredients for the agriculture and pet food industries, processed larvae may also be used as ingredients within livestock. Listen, I'm good. Tyson also, they make a bunch of their meat in very unethical ways. I'm a big meat eater. I eat basically a carnivore diet. I eat a ton of steak, tons of steak. But we ethically source it from local farms. I cannot stress that enough. We're trying to figure out if we've got some people who can offer you guys that same access to really good meat. We're just trying to make sure it all is possible before we tell you guys about it. But I will say this, no matter what you do, if you eat a bunch of meat like I do, try to ethically source it with a farm you can go to locally in your area, because you're going to feel better for your family to not have all this crap inside your meat, all of the injections they're giving animals at these big agricultural places, and the way they treat the animals. Frankly, I like to know that the cows I eat have had good lives, that they've lived in ethical places, that they've been grass-fed, that, you know, they have not been kept in this tiny little area with no room to move and shot up with every other vaccine and hormone possible. I think that that's one of the great things you can do for your family, is ensure that you're trying to deliver the healthiest food possible. You got to think about, in human history, if you go back, we have never eaten anything like the food we're eating today in terms of processed foods. We eat so many processed foods that none of our ancestors ever would have eaten, okay? And it changes your gut. Your gut is central to your health. And so if you're eating all this stuff that's processed, that is so different from everything that our ancestors ate, I think you're going to have this list of unintended consequences, one of those being the high rate of autoimmune diseases we're seeing. So I would caution with this new stuff, these new eat the bugs people, why don't we let the establishment global elite eat the bugs first? They can be the test subjects. If everything works out great and they look like paragons of health, fantastic. But last time I checked, these people look like gremlins, okay? They look like they're melting in many cases. Like, did you ever see the photos of the health authorities for, like, Los Angeles and some of these other places? They look like Skeletor. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not taking health advice from somebody who looks like a skeleton. It is not a good idea, in my opinion. I'm going to take health advice from people who look fantastic. I think that's one of the smarter things you can do. You know, it's like going to a dentist with black teeth. It makes no sense. Go to a dentist with great teeth. That makes sense. Same with hair people. Like, go to a hair person who's got great hair. They probably have good style. If you go to a hair person with a bowl cut, you're probably not going to be happy with what you walk out with. Okay? It's like common sense stuff. Same thing with food. You know, put into your kid's body things that are going to be life-giving, not dead foods. Dead foods are not a good thing. Give your kids something that lived, whether it be a steak, chicken, berries, something that was alive. You know, the processed foods, I think, they're understudied in terms of the impact they're having on us. And what could go wrong feeding our kids those living foods our ancestors lived off of? Nothing. If you're doing it, you know, in a responsible way, we're actually setting up to grow a lot of it ourselves right now in large scale. Because, you know, I really am a believer that you should be prepared for the future. And also, I just want to know my kids are eating clean foods, you know, and I think that it's a smart decision for everybody to consider. So thank you for joining us today. We have so much stuff to talk about because we missed a show yesterday. I apologize. We'll probably have a long one again tomorrow. But thank you for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow. And we love you guys. See you soon.